Welcome to another episode of PPL Pod. I want you to picture this. The year is, well, it's 2013.
Okay.
And we are at the first ever YouTube Music Awards. It's this massive, highly publicized event, right? Designed to celebrate the absolute biggest names in global music.
Yeah, like the defining megastars of the era.
Exactly. You got these huge acts nominated for Video of the Year. I mean, we're talking Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, and Psy, who are just completely broken the internet with Gangnam Style.
Right, shattered global records with that one.
The tension in the room is just palpable. And then they announced the winner. And it isn't Bieber. It isn't Gaga.
Nope.
It's a South Korean girl group that, honestly, from the perspective of the Western mainstream at that moment, was completely unexpected. They were called Girls' Generation.
It was a truly baffling David and Goliath moment for the Western music industry. I mean, you have this global upset where an act that many viewers in the U.S. had never even heard of suddenly dethroned the biggest pop titans on the planet.
Yeah, it must have felt like a glitch to a lot of people watching.
Oh, totally. It was a complete shock to the traditional industry gatekeepers. But, for millions of fans in Asia, it was just the inevitable overflow of a phenomenon that had been building for years.
Right. And even if you aren't a K-pop fan, you really need to know this story.
Yeah.
Because Girls' Generation, or SNSD, they aren't just a pop group.
No, they're literally referred to as the nation's girl group in South Korea.
Exactly. They're the architects of the modern Korean wave. These are pioneers who survived a notoriously grueling industry to completely rewrite the life cycle of a female pop act.
So, okay, let's unpack this.
That was good.
Because our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly how originally 9 women navigated immense fame, controversy, and just intense public scrutiny. We want to see how they became one of the longest-running and most influential acts in Asian music history.
And to really understand how monumental their success is, and how they pulled off that 2013 upset, we have to go way back before the fame. We really have to look at the starting line.
Right, the trainee system. Yeah. In the K-pop machinery, particularly in the early 2000s, under their label SM Entertainment, just getting to the starting line is a Herculean accomplishment. Debuting in K-pop isn't just getting a record deal.
It's not like getting discovered on SoundCloud.
Exactly, no. It is about surviving years of a highly rigorous, intensely competitive trainee system.
Yeah, I was reading through our sources, and the sheer grit required to make it through this system is just staggering. Like, if you're listening to this and wondering how someone mentally prepares for that kind of career, just consider Yuna.
Oh yeah, her story's wild.
Before she ever became a singer for Girls' Generation, she went through about 200 auditions. 200.
That is just an unbelievable number.
Right. And this wasn't just singing in a room. She was auditioning for music videos, dramas, movies, just undergoing constant, relentless evaluation by executives before she was even a legal adult.
And the scouting and development process was so exhaustive, pulling in talent from all different directions. Like, you had Jessica, who was actually the first member to join the training system back in 2000.
And she wasn't even looking for stardom, right?
Not at all. She was just on a family vacation, literally walking through a mall in South Korea, and she got scouted by an agent.
Wow.
But then you have someone like Soo-young, who had a completely different trajectory. She wasn't entirely green. She had actually already debuted in a Japanese pop duo called Route Zero back in 2002.
Oh, I didn't realize she had already debuted.
Yeah, but the industry is unforgiving. That group disbanded after just 1 year, so she was back to square one, essentially, going through the SM Open auditions to pry again from the bottom.
It's wild. It feels less like a traditional music industry origin story where a band forms in a garage, and much more like an elite Olympic training camp.
That's a really good comparison, actually.
You're recruited young, you drill on vocals, dance, media training, and foreign languages for years, and only the absolute best make the final team. But, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go for it.
When you put teenagers through this hyper-manufactured, intensely controlled system where every single move is monitored, doesn't that inherently strip away their individuality? Like, doesn't it turn them into identical products on an assembly line?
I mean, that is the defining tension of not just Girls' Generation, but really the entire K-pop industry. On one hand, yes, the system is explicitly designed to create a cohesive, polished product. You are trained to fit a specific role within a group.
Right. You have the main vocal, the lead dancer, all of that.
Exactly. But on the other hand, And this is crucial to understanding their longevity. Going through that shared adversity, the endless 12-hour dance practices, the constant uncertainty of whether they would ever actually debut, it forged a deep psychological resilience.
They really bonded over the trauma of it all.
Yeah, they weren't just coworkers. They had to learn how to operate as a single organism just to survive the training itself.
That makes a lot of sense. The pressure cooker either breaks you or it bonds you. And that bond set the stage for their official debut in August of 2007.
It did, yeah.
But looking at the timeline, they weren't an overnight explosion. They had a solid start with their debut album, but they didn't immediately take over the world. They had to grind for 2 years before they truly shifted the industry.
Right, their early releases were successful, but they were definitely still trying to find their exact footing in a market that wasn't entirely receptive to them just yet.
But that brings us to 2009.
Yes.
Which is when the ground completely shifted beneath them. Oh man, 2009, the release of their EP.
Such a massive turning point.
This wasn't just a hit song, it was a cultural phenomenon. The title track, G, dominated the charts in a way that is hard to overstate. It held the #1 spot on KBS's Music Bank, which is one of South Korea's premier weekly music TV programs.
Right.
And it held that spot for a record-breaking 9 consecutive weeks. For context, winning even 1 week on a show like that requires massive fan mobilization, huge streaming numbers, and physical sales. 9 weeks was completely unheard of.
What's fascinating here is the broader cultural context of that dominance. Like, why did this specific song hit so hard?
Yeah, what was going on in the industry at that point?
Well, from about 2002 to 2007, the Korean music industry was heavily dominated by male idol groups. Boy bands were the ones driving physical album sales and generating all the revenue.
So the labels just stopped investing as much in female acts.
Exactly. The girl group market was genuinely struggling to find a foothold. But Girls' Generation, purely through the irresistible, infectious energy of G, single-handedly shifted the public's focus back to female idols.
They basically proved that a girl group could command the exact same commercial power as the boy bands.
Right. They opened the floodgates for a whole new generation of female performers.
And the industry recognized that paradigm shift. The major music platform Melon eventually declared G the song of the decade. It is widely considered the magnum opus of modern Korean bubblegum pop.
It really is.
But what really strikes me is how it transcended music to become an entire lifestyle aesthetic. They sparked this massive fashion trend of wearing brightly colored skinny jeans.
Oh yeah, the skinny jeans were everywhere.
You literally couldn't walk down a street in Seoul without seeing that exact look. It was incredibly accessible, and it perfectly matched the bright, optimistic vibe of the song.
And that cultural ubiquity translated directly into unprecedented commercial power. This is really where we see the transition from musicians to corporate juggernauts.
That's the brand deals, right?
Yeah, exactly. In 2009 alone, the staggering popularity of G helped the group generate $1.2 million just in endorsement revenue.
Wow, just in endorsements.
Yeah, because their image was everywhere, brands wanted a piece of it. They were selling everything from cell phones to fried chicken. They had become a national obsession, setting the blueprint for how modern K-pop groups monetize their fame through brand partnerships.
So once you've completely conquered South Korea, and your faces are on every billboard and fried chicken box, the natural next step for a group this big is international expansion.
Of course.
But looking at our sources, this is where the story gets really complex. There is this stark divide in how their music was received in the East versus the West.
Yes, the translation of their success wasn't seamless everywhere.
Absolutely not. The strategy and the reception varied wildly. So in 2010, they made a highly calculated move into Japan.
Right. They signed with Wave Records.
And it was a massive, immediate success. By 2011, their eponymous Japanese studio album became the first album by a foreign girl group to top the Japanese Oricon chart.
And the Oricon is essentially the Japanese equivalent of the Billboard charts. It is notoriously difficult for non-Japanese acts to dominate.
Right. To put the scale of that success in perspective, their 3 Japanese concert tours drew a staggering 550,000 spectators. That set a record for any K-pop girl group at the time.
They completely resonated with the Japanese audience, likely because of the cultural proximity and the fact that the group heavily localized their content, singing in Japanese and adapting to local television formats.
But then we have to talk about their 2011 push into the United States.
Right. The U.S. market in 2011 was a completely different beast. It was pre-BTS, pre-Blackpink. The infrastructure for K-pop in America just wasn't there.
But they really tried. They signed with Interscope Records. They released an English version of their hit song, The Boys, which was a much more aggressive hip-hop influenced track compared to G.
Yeah, a huge departure from their bubblegum sound.
And they went on U.S. television. They made appearances on The Late Show with David Letterman and Live with Kelly.
They were doing all the right traditional promo.
They were, but it met with very limited success. The album only peaked at number 17 on the Billboard Heat Seekers chart.
And for listeners who don't know, the Heat Seekers chart is specifically for new developing artists. It's not the Hot 100.
Yeah, it's essentially the minor leagues of Billboard. The album sold about 21,000 copies, which, compared to selling out arenas in Japan, is a stark contrast.
A huge drop-off.
Right. So I have to wonder, did they just pick the wrong song? Or was America just entirely closed off to the idea of a 9-member Asian girl group at that time?
It was largely the latter. The Western market simply hadn't fully acclimated to K-pop yet. It was still seen as a niche, internet-based interest rather than a main stage pop force.
It just didn't compute for mainstream audiences yet.
Exactly. The language barrier, the large number of members, the highly synchronized choreography, it was a lot of cultural friction for a mainstream American audience that was used to solo pop stars like Katy Perry or Rihanna.
But that exact context is why that 2013 YouTube Music Awards moment we opened with is so triumphant.
Yes. Let's bring it right back to that hook.
2 years after that underwhelming, frustrating U.S. push, they are nominated for Video of the Year at the YouTube Music Awards, and they win.
It's incredible.
Their song, I Got a Boy, beats out the very Western artists who dominated the market that had previously rejected them.
And if you look at the sheer musicality of I Got a Boy, it starts to make sense why this specific track broke through the international noise.
How so?
Well, it wasn't just standard pop. It was a structural revelation. The track is this highly eclectic, almost chaotic mix of bubblegum pop, electropop, drum and bass, and dubstep.
Wait, how does a group even mix dubstep and bubblegum pop without giving the listener absolute whiplash?
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, usually a song has a verse, a chorus, and a bridge. This sounds like they just smashed 3 different songs together.
That's exactly what they did, and that's the genius of it. It shifts tempos, time signatures, and genres multiple times within a single track.
It must have sounded so jarring at first.
It does, but it completely commands your attention. Billboard actually lauded it as one of the most forward-thinking pop singles heard in any country that year.
Wow, that's high praise.
It really is. It proved that their artistry was pushing boundaries on a global scale. They weren't just chasing Western trends anymore. They were creating something entirely new and aggressively experimental.
But of course, with that massive global attention came intense Western scrutiny. As they got bigger, the discourse around them became much more complicated.
Oh, definitely.
Specifically regarding how they presented themselves as women in a deeply patriarchal industry.
The feminist debate surrounding Girls' Generation is a really crucial part of their history. When Western critics began analyzing their work, they often brought their own cultural lenses, which led to competing interpretations of the group's artistry and agency.
And looking at the sources, the friction is really palpable. On one side, you had critics taking major issue with their early aesthetic.
Right, like the cheerleaders and schoolgirls.
Exactly. For example, C.J. Lee, writing for the feminist magazine Femme, argued that the cutesy concepts of their early hits, like G and O, were inherently sexist.
What was her main critique there?
The argument was that these concepts intentionally infantilized the women to pander to male audiences, basically reinforcing this idea of puritanical innocence that strips them of real power.
And it's a valid critique from a Western feminist standpoint,
Yeah.
but you also have the counter-argument, which looks at how the group actively evolved over time and exercised their own agency.
Right, they didn't stay in those school uniforms forever.
Exactly. Take their 2011 hit, The Boys. That song was widely praised for its feminist themes. The lyrics portrayed sexually daring, confident women who were entirely in control of their narrative.
I even saw media outlets drawing direct comparisons to Beyoncé's Run the World for its fierce, women-powered message.
Yep. And you can actually see that evolution visually. The mechanics of their wardrobe choices tell a whole story.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they started out wearing those matching high school uniforms, literally dressing as identical parts of a whole. But by the time the boys came around, the members were choosing their own distinct clothes.
Emphasizing their own individual tastes and personality.
Exactly. And perhaps the most striking visual shift and a real flex of their industry power was during the I Got a Boy era in 2013.
What happened then?
So the choreography for that song was incredibly complex, rooted heavily in hip-hop. Because of the physical demands, the group explicitly demanded to wear flat shoes and sneakers instead of their signature high
And wow,
heels.
they just flat out refused to perform in heels.
Yes, just so they could execute the performance properly. They prioritized their athletic performance and their art over the traditional, expected feminine aesthetic of the industry.
That's huge. So what does this all mean? Were they trapped by their innocent image in the early days, acting as pawns for a male-dominated corporate machine? Or were they strategically using fashion and genre to evolve alongside their aging fan base?
The evidence strongly points to a calculated strategic evolution. In a highly manufactured industry where idols often have zero say in their creative direction, girls' generations slowly but surely wrestled control of their own narrative.
They used the early concepts to build a massive, loyal fan base.
Right, and once they had the leverage, they adapted to their own maturity and demanded to be treated as artists.
But just as they reached the pinnacle of that musical and visual maturity, the group faced a devastating internal fracture.
A huge one.
Just September 30, 2014, Jessica, the member who'd been scouted in the mall 14 years earlier, announces that she has been dismissed from the group.
SM Entertainment confirmed it shortly after, citing conflicts between Jessica's personal business schedules, she was launching her own fashion line, and the group's grueling promotional activities.
It was a seismic event in the K-pop world.
Absolutely. You have to understand that a group like Girls' Generation had sold the narrative of absolute sisterhood and unbreakable unity for 7 years.
Right, so to have a member dismissed wasn't just a personnel change. It shattered the illusion that the fandom had bought into.
And the emotional stakes were just astronomically high. The fandom was in absolute shock.
There was a fan event in China the very same day the news broke. The sources say the remaining 8 members were visibly emotional on stage, struggling to get through the choreography with an empty space where Jessica used to be.
It must have been heartbreaking to watch.
It was. The next day, the group's leader, Taeyeon, actually had to publicly apologize to the fans. She famously begged them to believe in us one more time. It genuinely felt like the end of an era.
The human cost of the corporate machinery was fully on display. And in many groups, a fracture like that would signal a permanent decline. The magic is broken, the fans divide, and the label slowly stops investing.
But that didn't happen here.
No. Rather than collapsing, the remaining 8 members adapted. They absorbed the shock, reorganized their vocal distributions, and pushed forward. And their resilience led to another major turning point in 2017.
Right, because by 2017, 3 members, Tiffany, Sooyoung, and Sohyun, decided not to renew their contracts with SM Entertainment. They left the agency entirely.
Yes, which is usually a death sentence for a group.
Exactly. Usually in K-pop, the label owns the group's name, the intellectual property, everything. When members leave the agency, the group is effectively dead.
The corporate structure is designed so that the label always wins, but they negotiated their exit explicitly on the condition that the group remain together.
That's amazing.
They went on an extended hiatus to focus on their individual careers, but they fiercely refused to officially disband. They held on to the identity of Girls' Generation, even while working under entirely different management companies.
And the most incredible part is how much they flourished individually during this period. Diversification became their ultimate survival tactic.
Oh, definitely.
Taeyeon became this massive, critically acclaimed solo star with a legendary vocal reputation. Hyeon debuted as a DJ, literally reinventing herself in the electronic dance music space.
Yeah.
And Yoona, Sooyoung, Yuri, and Sehyun all found huge mainstream success in acting across film and television.
Which is exactly why industry observers noted that this level of diversified solo success is considered the absolute ideal example of growth for a veteran girl group.
They proved they could stand alone just as powerfully as they stood together.
Exactly. They were no longer reliant on the group as a single organism survival tactic they learned as trainees. They had become self-sustaining moguls.
Which makes what happened next so incredible. Let's fast forward to 2022.
2022.
For their 15th anniversary, they announced a full group comeback with a brand new album called Forever One. And I don't think casual listeners realize just the sheer logistical and legal miracle this was.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is virtually unprecedented. You have to understand that in the K-pop industry, young age is viewed as capital.
Groups are fundamentally seen as disposable.
Right. They routinely disband the moment their initial 7-year contracts end, so the label can invest in younger, newer trainees.
So for an 8-member veteran girl group to reunite, release a full studio album, and perform together, while several members belonged to entirely different competing management agencies. It was a massive industry-shifting milestone.
It required an unbelievable amount of legal coordination and sheer willpower from the women themselves.
It proved they were bigger than the corporate system that built them. They didn't just survive the machine, they eventually bent it to their will.
And the public agreed. By 2024, a Gallup Korea poll showed that Girls' Generation tied with Blackpink as the most loved K-pop girl group of the 21st century.
That is wild.
Their legacy is permanently cemented in the DNA of modern pop music. They are literally cited as the primary role models for almost every major girl group operating today.
Yeah, you hear it constantly from members of Twice, aespa, LE SSERAFIM. They all looked at Girls' Generation as the blueprint.
They taught the next generation how to perform, how to evolve visually, and most importantly, how to survive the internal politics of the industry.
It brings us right back to that opening tension, that baffling moment at the 2013 YouTube Music Awards.
Right.
They weren't just a flash-in-the-pan group that got lucky on the internet because of a viral algorithm. They are a masterclass in longevity.
Absolutely.
And I want to leave you with this final thought. We are entering an era where music labels are literally experimenting with AI idols.
Oh, don't even get me started.
I know, right? Virtual avatars that never age, never get tired, never complain about their contracts, and certainly never demand flat shoes.
Yeah.
But Girls' Generation's messy, fiercely fought, entirely human longevity proves that perfection isn't what sustains a legacy. In an industry originally designed to manufacture and discard disposable youth, they prove that adaptability and genuine evolution are the ultimate currency.
It's a great way to put it.
If labels want the next 50 years of global pop dominance, the secret isn't building a better machine. It's learning how to let your artists grow up.
Thanks for listening to PPL Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.